that. And now we heard a lot about what Washington needs to do about social media, but we also can hear what is going to happen in Washington regulations and funding with a little bit of a primer from Steve Waldman, who's a co-founder of Report for America and also leading up the Support Local Journalism Coalition here, and take a few minutes to tell us about what's happening. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Vince. Very quickly, the Rebuild Local News Coalition is a group of about 20, 25 different national organizations that are all working in the space of helping to save local news. And we pulled this coalition together about 2 years ago. It's a very broad coalition. It includes publishers and labor unions, Black and Hispanic publishers, nonprofit, conservative rural newspapers, everything, to try to figure out whether or not there was a way that we could really all get together around public policy that would help save local news. And it started with the premise that in addition to us needing business model changes and a greater role for philanthropy in the nonprofit sector, we also needed sound public policy to help save local news. We have seen throughout history, whether it's the Post Office Act of 1789 or the FCC's decisions on how to distribute broadcast licenses or the Public Broadcasting Act, that government policy has played a really major role. What we ended up focusing on is something called the Local Journalism Sustainability Act. And a piece of that actually got into the Build Back Better bill that was passed by the House and came within 2 votes of passing in the Senate. Specifically is a payroll tax credit, or a fundable payroll tax credit that goes to local news pegged to the number of local journalists that they have. And it's a very significant benefit, $25,000 from the government per journalist. In the first year, $15,000 in years 2 through 5 of the program. So it's quite a lot of money, and it's only for local, and it is only for editorial. There's other aspects to it that I'm happy to talk about afterwards. But where that stands now is we thought it was totally dead, but it may be a little bit undead in the sense that if some reconciliation-based vehicle reappears, we have a real shot at being in there because we have very strong support from Senator Schumer, Senator Wyden, the chair of the Finance Committee, and the most important person in America, Joe Manchin, who is also a strong supporter of this. So that's kind of where we are with that. The other big piece of legislation that is potentially in play relates to local news is called the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act, JCPA. This is the bill that is attempting to push Facebook and Google to pay content providers for their content. You've probably heard about the Australia model and what other countries are trying to do. This is basically the American version of that. Our coalition has actually not taken a position on it because the members of our coalition are a little bit divided. Many want to do this, but others feel that the bulk of the money will go to large players and not medium and small size players. So there's some debate about that, but that is basically, I'm told, is going to play out in the next few weeks of whether or not they have a new bill that has support. And the first one, by the way, will also play out in the next couple months. So it's a very big moment, big time. The third thing I would say is that when it looked like the first bill had died, we started getting, at the Rebuild Local News Coalition, all these incoming inquiries from the states saying, well, if y'all are not going to do this in the federal government, why don't we do it in the states? And all of a sudden, these bills started popping up. Some of them were direct copycats of the federal bill. Some were new, just starting to move. They passed, this committee in the Wisconsin legislature, that committee in the California legislature, and there's various elements, and there's a little bit of momentum on the state level. One interesting idea that has come up in one context is whether or not community foundations can and should play a role as part of the architecture of how money is distributed, on the theory that community foundations are based in the community, are nonpartisan, have an understanding of what's going on. So anyway, that's a kind of interesting twist. I would love to hear you from Doug Root of the Pittsburgh Foundation. I don't know if he's here, but he was very instrumental in organizing a group of community foundations to advocate for the payroll tax credit. And I think that's a great model, by the way. I think this is an area where the voice of foundations, community and national, could really play a very important and interesting role. So that's where we are now. I'm happy to elaborate on any of this out in the hallway or at lunch. Thank you very much.